Good evening, Houdat Nation, and happy Sunday evening. Happy post-mortem Sunday evening to our Bayou Blitz family. As you see, I'm wearing an appropriate shirt tonight. I hope everybody enjoyed the games. They were entertaining-ish. And I hope if you're a Saints fan, kind of a bittersweet pill to swallow. But we want to thank you for joining our Bayou Blitz post-game show. I'm Bob Rose. I am one of your co-hosts to your Bayou Blitz show. And joining me is Brendan Boylan. After our cluster bleepity bleep of an evening between watching the games, tracking statistics, redoing, and then re-updating, and then re-updating our feed. Here we are. Hello, Brendan.
Hey, hey, we're here. We're here somewhere in the internet verse or what have you. Yeah, bittersweet. I think is a good word because as frustrating as the season was to cover, as frustrating as the season was for you guys, the fans. At the end of the day, like the Saints played their best football of the season, arguably these last 2 weeks. So it's kind of bittersweet because they finally started clicking. The offense was finally starting to make things happen. The defense still had problems, but they also had their moments. Like there was a lot of things you're like, it would have been nice to see this one ride out and play out and see what happened. But that all circles back to you need to see that type of potential, scariest word in sports. The potential we were hoping for, we saw way too late. That would
Yeah.
have been great to see those games midway through the season and go, okay, here it is. But as we said in the pregame, this is the third straight year that the Saints found themselves in
Yep.
familiar territory in going into the last week of the season, needing a win and help.
Yep.
Um, and you never want to find yourself in that position.
No, and folks, just in case you didn't watch the football games today, and you're just getting caught up on the day's developments with us now. First, thank you for putting your trust in us. But essentially, what happened is obviously the New Orleans Saints destroyed the Atlanta Falcons today, 48-17. But they did not win the NFC South title because they lost out the tiebreaker to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers when the Buccaneers beat the trash franchise known as the Carolina Panthers 9-0. The Saints did not get the wild card berth because they needed the Seattle Seahawks to lose to the trash Arizona Cardinals. Cardinals blew 2 field goals and had a embarrassing coverage breakdown, so Seattle won that game. And the Green Bay Packers needed to lose to the trash franchise Chicago Bears, and the Packers, along with some striped shirt help, they did what they always do. They beat the Chicago Bears. So basically, the Saints missed the playoffs by. You can basically go back to week 3 and a 17-0 lead with less than 12 minutes to go on the road at the Green Bay Packers. There were other games, other very winnable games, coulda, woulda, shoulda, that the Saints won, but you can point to that moment in week 3. The Saints win that game. We're not even talking about tiebreakers. We're not even talking about needing anybody to lose. The Saints come into week 18 very comfortably, the NFC South champions. And there you have it. And like you said, Brendan, this is the third straight year where you had to depend on multiple teams, help from multiple teams in the final week. You didn't get it, but they painted themselves in their own corner. They dug their own grave. They tied their own noose around their neck. Get in, loser. Let the slashing begin. This is their own fault. The fault of the New Orleans Saints and nobody else.
Yeah, as much as I don't agree with things DA has said through this year, one thing he did say in the locker room post game was, you lay in the bed that you make, right, or something along those lines, and it's true. Like at the end of the season, and that's where we are now. Like Bob said, you can look back specifically at week 3, up 17-0 in the fourth quarter. There are other games you can look back at, but that game in particular, it's like, okay, you blew a wide open shot. You would have clinched the NFC South going into this week. You could have sat guys or done whatever you needed to do. So yeah, this isn't anybody's fault but the Saints. It's unfortunate, like I said, that you're seeing the potential and the things that we saw in the preseason now opposed to in week 10, 11, 12, whatever. And before we go into this game, Bob, just because I see it in the comments right now about the apology to Arthur Smith, let's go ahead and knock this out because it's been unfortunate because the Saints played a hell of a ball game.
Yeah.
Right? Top to bottom, they played extremely well. And we'll hit on some of the standouts of the game. But all of social media has been about the fake kneel down for a touchdown late in the game. Dennis Allen's comments, Jameis Winston's comments on it, Eric McCoy, Cesar Ruiz, like everybody's talked about it. And I think it's a disservice, honestly, Bob. I get it. Like, you're a reporter. I'm a reporter. We're in that realm to where we understand that you have to ask questions like that. But when that's the first question out of a reporter's mouth and not, hey, you just smacked a team. Like, you smacked a divisional rival the last week of the season. You're playing your best football. You know, the other games hadn't started yet. The fact that the first questions weren't, hey, Derek Carr, you just tied your career high in touchdown passes. Or, hey, A.T. Perry, an undrafted rookie, has a outstanding game today. 2 touchdowns or anything like the Kendre Miller in his first game back in what seems like forever. The fact that none of those questions were asked before, you know, the media were asking the players about that. The fact that Dennis Allen had to address that before the game itself, it's frustrating. So for those of you who don't know what we're talking about, Tyrann Mathieu intercepted a pass late in the fourth quarter and was tripped up at the 1 yard line, trying to return it in for a touchdown.
Gave himself up. Let's call a spade a spade.
He claimed he got caught in the Matrix, Bob. Okay, that was humorous. I actually liked that.
Yeah, it was.
I thought that was funny. But opposed to kneeling it out, the Saints came out in victory formation and ran a fake kneel down, which I don't think I'd ever seen before, honestly. It handed the ball to Jamal Williams, and Jamal Williams punched it in for a 1 yard touchdown, his first rushing touchdown of the season after leading the league in rushing touchdowns a year ago. Arthur Smith, very upset about the Saints running up the score when he shook hands with Dennis Allen, said a lot of words that I cannot repeat. But for you A+ lip readers out there, you knew exactly what he said. And actually, I think one mic picked it up. So you guys know what he said. Dennis Allen opens up his press conference apologizing, saying that's not who we are. Very funny because, again, you social media fans and people were praising Dennis Allen for that, saying it's the best thing he'd done as a Saints head coach, and that lasted a very long 5 minutes. And DA he did throw people under the bus for that, including Jameis Winston. And then as this thing has continued to unravel and unwrap, it was the players as a collective unit that said, hey, let's get Jamal the touchdown. I heard something, it was either Jamal or Jimmy. So one of them was going to score. And when they came out in victory formation, I guess it would have just been easier to hand it to the up back than try to get Jimmy Graham to leak out. But nonetheless, that was the decision. DA didn't agree with it. He called it unacceptable or inexcusable, what have you. And Bob, yes, that's a storyline. And we're going to talk about it because it is a storyline. But I do want to mention the fact first, and we said it multiple times before we started talking about the Saints played their best football game of the season today. And that should be the storyline, the head storyline, not this. And I fully blame not the players, but Dennis Allen for allowing this to become the storyline that it is.
I'm trying to think if I agree with that. I don't know if I totally agree with you about Dennis Allen by his lonesome letting this become a storyline. The fans also forced it to become a storyline. Yeah. And I know I'm pissing off fans of the two of us, fans of the Bayou Blitz, fans of the Saints News Network. But I look at it this way: if you're sitting there mad right now at what I'm saying, then you were one of the people that I'm talking about. The fact that you're forcing it to be the main storyline. The reality is this: the New Orleans Saints and Atlanta Falcons have one of the most bitter rivalries in all of sports, let alone let alone NFL football. And this this should have been just another splinter on one of the two sides in that rivalry to go right up there with Shy Tuttle's stiff arm, Jimmy Graham's slam over the goalposts in Atlanta. And by the way, Jimmy Graham should have gotten that touchdown, not Jamal Williams, but I digress. The Hail Marys from Steve Bartkowski in the 1978 season. William Andrews for the Falcons just running wild over the Saints. Defections, Bobby Hebert, Joe Horn, Morton Anderson, from us to them, Ryan Nielsen, Curtis Lofton, from them to us, just et cetera. It's at the 28-3 that will live in infamy. This should be one of those moments. But instead, Dennis Allen, if you're a coach, whether you agree with what your team did or not, you address that, sure. But to completely throw them under the bus shows me three things. Number one, the coach doesn't have the back of his team. Number two, the coach doesn't have a backbone. And number three, and this might be the most disturbing, the entire team just is willing to ignore their coaching staff's orders. Now, at the time, the Saints were still, at the time, this was not the final game of the regular season. These players still conceivably had to go back and face these coaches tomorrow in practice in preparation for a potential playoff game. After you just blatantly ignored orders from them, whether we agree with those orders or not, those were the orders. That shows a complete lack of respect and a complete lack of just a complete lack of humanity from players to coach. And I think that should say something to the front office. Now, it won't. We both agreed in pregame, and I'm not willing to budge from that now, that the front office has already made up their mind that Dennis Allen will be coming back. I would be surprised if they did an about face, even with this turn of events. But again, if you're Dennis Allen, you have to own up to this, especially if you're going to be the coach of the New Orleans Saints or anywhere going forward, that, okay, you might have called Arthur Smith on the phone later tonight and cleared the air about what really happened, but to do so publicly like that, to handle that publicly the way you did, was just completely cowardly, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I agree. And here's the bigger, and you kind of addressed it, the bigger issue for me in all of this is, Jameis called it a group decision or a collective decision to do what they did and kind of forego and to bring back the Drew Brees audio tapes to hit kill on it, and say, okay, we're gonna get Jamal the ball and what have you. I think that speaks volumes.
What's funny too, and I'm sorry to interrupt, Brendan. What's funny too is a lot of times in situations like this, the players will say something to the opposing players. Hey, we want to get Jamal a touchdown. Atlanta, you've already, forget the score of this game. You were eliminated when Tampa Bay won. We want to get Jamal a touchdown. We're going to let you know what we're going to do. Maybe Atlanta resists that. Maybe they don't, but at least going in. So the fake kneel down formation I just found hilarious. And again, I go back to what I said before. What this should be is just another spear thrown in the sides of one of these two teams. I apologize for my interruption.
Oh, no, you're good. And that's what people here in the comments are saying too. We'll be talking about that play for years. Pammy says it shows no respect. And you're absolutely right. I think Christian's saying DA doesn't deserve any respect from players. I mean, here's the thing: is clearly he doesn't have the respect of his players, and clearly doesn't have the respect of Jameis Winston. I'm not throwing anything on Jameis Winston. You guys know that have loyally watched us for the last. I think we're on episode like 89 now. I love Jameis Winston, the football player. I adore Jameis Winston, the person, and what he's done off the field in New Orleans. Right? He's an A-plus teammate, A-plus guy. With that said, Jameis clearly at this point doesn't have a whole lot of respect for DA, and we've speculated on that throughout the year, right? And kind of the shade that's been thrown on Jameis from the coaching staff and vice versa and whatnot. But this is what I'll say about that. Yes, it shows a lot of lack of respect for Dennis Allen. It also shows me a lot that it wasn't just Jameis, but it was also Eric McCoy. It was also Cesar Ruiz. And Cesar Ruiz, I think, had the best quote out of everybody to this point. Was he said something along the lines of, if Jamal didn't score, I don't think I could have, like, lived with myself, or I wouldn't have been able to get any sleep knowing that Jamal didn't score. For as much as we've said that this might be a split locker room, or the locker room's divided, or the coaches lost the locker room, it's really nice to see that the players themselves are still like their own little family.
Yeah.
You know, to be able to go in the huddle, and I don't know what was said. I hope so. I hope NFL Films had that mic'd up or something.
Yeah.
I hope there's something that gets released from that. But if James walked in the huddle and went, all right, guys, our boy Jamal hasn't scored all year. We're going to give him the football. You know, he deserves to score. And I mean, Jameis said something like that post-game too, saying how much he means to this football team. Like, we wanted to reward him. And some of you guys might not agree with that. And Jamal had a really tough year and not a very good year. But he was expected to have a good year. He was expected to be that kind of 1-2 punch with Kamara, and then Kendre Miller kind of like sprinkled in there. And unfortunately, all of them missed time, whether it was because of injury or suspension. I don't think we got the full mix. We didn't get all the ingredients for that bowl of gumbo. And it just didn't happen. But Jamal had a tough year. And I'm sure psychologically, we talked about Desmond Ridder psychologically coming in this game. What kind of psyche are you in when you're like, I had 17 rushing touchdowns last season? I haven't found the end zone yet this year. Like, that's got to be tough too. So the fact that the team said, hey, we got to make sure this guy gets it. You know, I love that. But kind of what John said in one of his comments, like, there are way too many layers to this now.
Yeah.
Right? It's going to be like peeling an onion, where, to your point, Bob, it should just be one of those plays that lives in the lore of this rivalry, of like you know, giving the birds the bird, you know, we're running it up because we can.
Mm-hmm.
And now instead it's like we're peeling an onion back. Okay, well, what does this mean? And what does this mean? And what does this show? And what does this do? You know, John said it was like that scene from Rudy. Haha, screw the call from the coach, put it in the end zone. I see that. But it was one of those, like I said, this is going to be something that should have been one of those Shy Tuttle-like moments. But instead, it's going to be one of these things that we continuously talk about, not just today, not just through the off season, but into next year, into the next 2 times these teams play, and potentially throughout the remainder of Dennis Allen's tenure as head coach. We might circle this one and go, this is the moment we knew. Like, if the Saints come out and they are terrible to start next season, are we going to look back at this moment and go, this is the moment we knew, and circle it and say, this is the moment we knew he lost the locker room entirely? Maybe.
Yeah, it could be. And instead, it should have been one of those moments that was meme-worthy for the rest of the franchise history between the New Orleans Saints and Atlanta Falcons, such as Atlanta can't even defend a kneel down formation kind of thing, and things like that. I know I'm going to be using that next year. Again, right alongside the 28-3 memes and the Bounty Gate, that the Falcons like to use back at us, and the Shy Tuttle stiff arm. The Atlanta Falcons can't even defend a kneel down formation kind of thing. But instead, we're talking about the meaning behind all this, and players not having respect for coach not having backbone and throwing players under the bus. It shouldn't be that. This should be, as far as I'm concerned, the Band-Aid of the 2023-24 season just needs ripped off. And this one final incident, it almost feels like a festering wound. And I know we're still going to be. I know we're going to address it on Tuesday on Under the Dome. I know you and I will still have to be talking about it. On our Bayou Blitz, weekly Bayou Blitz show this week. But after this week, I'm going to refuse to talk about it from here on out.
Because there's no need to talk about it. The season's over. It'll get brought up, right? It'll get brought up. We will probably address it after this week. The next time we will address it will likely be the next time these two teams play. And that's what it is. Also, just to throw it out there before we move on, did Arthur Smith's reaction, was that warranted? Some of you are going to say yes. Some of you are going to say they're salty. My opinion, and it's always been my opinion, if you don't like it, stop it.
Yeah.
And that's just how I stand. I understand this is a little bit different because you're coming out in a victory set and your defense is probably thrown off guard too, but it is what it is. So with that, Bob, go ahead. Last thought.
As you know, I often think in terms of a coach or an athlete. And whether Arthur Smith's reaction was warranted really depends on what side you're standing on. If I'm the coach of the Atlanta Falcons, absolutely, it was warranted. If I'm a player on the Atlanta Falcons, I feel that it was warranted because I feel like my coach has my back. Now, if I'm Arthur Smith, I probably go off on Dennis Allen. Maybe not as severe in public, but I definitely get a point across. And then in private, I might lay into him. But guess what? I'm doing the same thing to my own players in the locker room. Hey, if you'd effing stop them, this wouldn't happen. So it's your job to stop me. So I'm going off on everybody. If I'm on the other side, if I'm on the New Orleans Saints sideline, I'm or a fan of anyone other than the Atlanta Falcons, I am saying that too. I'm like, well, if you just stop it, But think, folks, and be real. For you Saints fans in the chat, I know what you're saying. Most of you are saying about Arthur Smith and the Atlanta Falcons, and if you stop it, blah blah blah, it wouldn't happen. But if the Falcons did that to the Saints in the same exact situation, be honest about your reaction. Again, so it all depends on which side of the fence that you're standing on. I choose to, as I usually do, I choose to stand from the perspective of a coach. And if I'm Arthur Smith, I'm probably going off in similar fashion at Dennis Allen, but I'm going off in the same way to my team, saying the exact same things that you guys are saying. Well, if you guys would do your job, then this wouldn't have happened.
Let's move on to the game itself and close the book and the chapter on our post-game shows for 2023. Kenneth asks real quick, what do you feel is a downside to the Saints? One, well, we kind of said it at the top, so thanks for joining us. Here is the fact that the Saints were playing their best ball of the year. Mm-hmm. Last week and this week, so it's kind of bittersweet to see it end because it seemed like things were finally coming together. With that said, Bob, not to recap the whole game and give you guys the rundown, but the Saints defense looked pitiful early in the ball game.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden came together. The offense played very well, particularly in the second half. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but there was at one point the Saints were on like a 24-3 run. I know it's a basketball term, but that was that's how dominant the Saints were for stretches of that ball game. And the thing I really liked about it, Bob, is when you go back and you look at the box score, it wasn't just one player torching the Falcons defense. Like the ball was spread around. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different players finished with at least 3 targets and 9 different receivers total. Shaheed got in the end zone. Olave had a juggle in the end zone, which was a pretty incredible catch. Mm-hmm. And concentration and get your feet in bounds. Your guy, A.T. Perry, What a game from him. 3 catches, 2 touchdowns for A.T. Perry, who finishes with more touchdown receptions than Garrett Wilson this year. Just to throw that out there. It's a fun fact. But the Saints offense almost put up a 50 burger. Probably their most dominant. I don't even think there's a probably is their most dominant performance as an offense this season in the Derek Carr era. You asked me in the pregame if I thought Derek Carr would throw over 300 yards. I threw out there, yes, I did. It was a dot. He did throw for over 300 yards, but he had 4 touchdowns. He looked dominant. He had what? We'll throw his numbers up right there. Only 6 incompletions for Derek Carr.
And 2 were throwaways.
So, I mean, Bob, is there a negative thing you could say about this offense?
Considering the personnel, considering the personnel on the field, I mean, you were playing your 3rd string right tackle. And Cam Irving had 2 penalties, almost got Derek Carr killed on a sack on the first drive. He played like a 3rd string right tackle. So you're playing your 3rd string right tackle. You don't have Michael Thomas. You don't have Alvin Kamara. Andrus Peat got nicked up. I don't remember if it was James Hurst or Cesar Ruiz had to leave the game for a little while. So, you factor all that in, and you just showed Derek Carr's stat lines. A.T. Perry had a wonderful game. Olave, Jawan, Rashid Shaheed all came up with big catches. Kendre Miller had the by far the best game of his short career. You had 400 yards of total offense. You had 154 on the ground without Kamara and without Taysom Hill really going off. So, yeah, there's not very much negative to say about the performance of this New Orleans Saints offense. Really, there's little negative to say about the performance of their offense through the last 6, 7, 8 weeks of the season. Now, there's a couple games notwithstanding, of course, but for the most part, the last half of the season, and especially the way they closed out the year with these last couple of games, this was the offense that we expected to see from the New Orleans Saints when they signed Derek Carr. When they put together the offensive line, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, I don't have much bad to say about them, for today's performance at all.
No, and I'm glad you said no Michael Thomas, but we talked about this throughout the year. Was the Saints were 1 injury away in that receiving corps from being down bad, and at points they were without Mike Thomas, without Rashid Shaheed. At points, A.T. Perry has really stepped up in a couple games this year. The Minnesota game, the other game that comes to mind, where he had a big touchdown catch from Jameis Winston, actually, and then Kendre Miller, a guy that in camp impressed people. You saw speed, you saw agility, maybe not the same as Alvin Kamara. I don't think there's ever going to be another Alvin Kamara, but characteristics that were similar to Alvin Kamara, that were complementary to Alvin Kamara. The one thing about Kendre that people forget, he's a big back. He's like 220.
Yeah.
He moves like that. Only had 1 catch. I think it was like a 5-6 yard catch. So the rest of it came on the ground, over 70 rushing yards, the incredible touchdown where he really should have been tackled for a loss, but it was the effort to get in. I thought the offense was great. And like you said, Bob, it was without key pieces of the offensive line. No Landon Young. Obviously, Ram is on IR. So like you mentioned, Cam Irving, your 3rd string right tackle. Pete left the game at one point. So Hurst had to bump out to tackle. That's one thing that not a lot of people are talking about, but Trevor Penning is in the doghouse.
We'll have plenty of time to address that kind of thing this offseason.
Oh, yeah. I was like, oh, my Lord, he's down bad.
If you're below Max Garcia, Cam Irving, and Landon Young, you're in serious, serious trouble.
Yeah, you're not looking too good, but the Saints offense was great.
Yeah.
I mean, the defense had some gimmies today. Both interceptions were gimmies, thrown right at Alontae Taylor, who got benched again today. That'll be another offense or off-season topic on whether he's going to stay in the slot or not. The fumble recovery the snap wasn't great. Ritter wasn't ready for it. Peyton Turner jumps on it. good for Peyton Turner.
Yeah, two of the three turnovers, were the Falcons falconing. Now, I wouldn't call the Alante Taylor interception a gimme. I thought he did a great job of reading Ritter's eyes and moving into position. Tyrann Mathieu baited quarterbacks as he will expertly do. And it's not like Desmond Ridder is a smart quarterback that can read defenses adeptly. And then the fumble, like you said, was an absolute gimme. But credit the Saints, both the defense. For recording the turnover and the offense for taking advantage of all three of them.
Oh, absolutely. I just think ultimately this game, and you said it best, is you don't expect a team to put up 48 points every night. But this is more of what we expected when Derek Carr signed. And you go through the season. Obviously, this is the Saints' high in points for the season, but I go back to this game, the Colts victory, maybe. Those two probably in particular, where I look at the offense and I go, that's what I expected for majority of the season. Impressed again that they did it without some key contributors. But I also think this signals potentially the end of an era for New Orleans. And I kind of mentioned it in the pregame, like Kamara didn't play, Thomas didn't play, Marshall Lattimore didn't play, Ramczyk didn't play. So you're talking about a lot of pieces of that 17 draft class. Yeah. And you could signal the end of Saints, Saints careers of some of these guys. Ramczyk's knee is kind of in question on whether he'll actually ever play again, not just in New Orleans. Marshawn Lattimore's restructuring of his contract opens the door for a potential trade. And we know some of the drama that's, been there for a little bit. Michael Thomas, we know all about that. And there were some rumblings with Alvin Kamara too. Now, if I had to say which one I thought was coming back, the ones I thought would be coming back, I would assume that Ramczyk and Kamara would be the most likely to come back.
I'd agree with that. I mean, Michael Thomas is essentially a free agent. As you said, Marshawn Lattimore's restructure. Now, if the Saints can clear enough salary cap space before June 2nd, that really opens the door to be able to trade him. I'd agree. Ramczyk and Kamara, the way their contracts are structured, you're not going to be able to move on from them unless you set up a restructure similar to what they just did with Marshawn Lattimore. Folks, if you're counting, Michael Thomas is the last of that underrated 2016 draft class to remain on the team, and Alvin Kamara, Ryan Ramczyk, Marshawn Lattimore, all part of that great 2017 draft class. They are the last three members standing from that draft class. So, big question marks going forward.
Yeah, and we have a whole off season to get into that. As we kind of conclude our thoughts here for 2023 and the season as a whole, Bob. I want to play dot or drop, but all the questions on the 23 season, and we'll go a little bit further in the 2023 season on the Bayou Blitz this week as well. Dot or drop. This Saints offense was the best Saints offense we'd seen since the retiring of Drew Brees.
Dot. Zero question in my mind. And I would have said that before today too. Yes, there have been certainly disappointing moments. Yes, they were at times downright pathetic in the first half of the year. But the Saints offense in 2022, not good. Saints offense in 2021, last year, Sean Payton, not good. Saints offense in 2020 with Drew Brees and Alvin Kamara having a great year, but zero bodies at the receiving corps. 2020, not good. So I will say, I'll go a step further and say this is the best Saints offense that we have seen since 2019, when Brees, Thomas, Kamara, all healthy, offensive line, upright, standing. Mark Ingram was gone by 2019, but still, Latavius Murray, very effective.
Running back.
Definitely.
history, Latavius will go down as an underrated one.
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, I will give that an unquestioned dot that this was the best offense at the very least since Drew Brees retired.
I want to get this one in before you ask me. Fan question from Tex Saints. Are there any players who stand out to you as moving on from it not being a Saints uniform in 2024? We got plenty of time to get into that, but I will give you one offensive and one defense real quick. Offensive one is the no-brainer. Jameis Winston will not be in a Saints uniform next season. He hinted at it in his interview today as well, where when he was asked about whether he wanted to be here, he said he wants to be here. It's evident his love for the team and the city, but it's not just his decision. I think that final comment kind of tells you he knows that they're not going to bring him back. And he also knows he's 30 years old now, right? 30 years old yesterday. Happy belated. But he knows his clock on being a starter is coming to an end as well.
Mhm.
So he's going to go out and try to find that. Defensively, we just said Marshawn Lattimore has the potential. I think that's cheating, so I won't do that one. Marcus May, I think, is the one for me that I don't think will be back. I think Howden played well enough for the Saints to have some faith there.
Mhm.
And Marcus May, in his tenure as a Saint, was not healthy.
Go ahead. Yeah, it's
And
fine.
didn't have a whole lot of time. So that's the concern there for me with Marcus May. Was not healthy, off the field issues, and a rookie kind of outshined him here as of late.
And I agree. It's a great question, and it's one that we'll address probably in multiple shows leading up to the draft. Because there are questions about veterans, Cam Jordan, Demario Davis. Yeah, likely to be back, but you never know. You mentioned Marcus May, all kinds of rumors about Marshawn Lattimore. I'm going to go one offense and one defense too. I'm going to make it very simple. Jimmy Graham. And we teased hard at it in the pregame show. I think Jimmy Graham is going to retire. He came back for the New Orleans Saints and the New Orleans Saints only. I think Jimmy Graham is ready to move on with the next chapter of his life. But a couple offensive free agents to keep an eye on: Michael Thomas, as we mentioned, Andrus Peat, James Hurst. All of them are free agents, in addition to the rumors about Alvin Kamara that you're going to hear. Right now, folks, stay tuned to us, and by us I mean Brendan, myself, Saints News Network, and obviously Nick Underhill, good friend of ours at New Orleans Football. Don't pay attention to literally anybody else. Everybody else is going to be hearsay, and you're going to be hearing all kinds of rumors and fake sources. We do not give fake sources. So I'll make it simple. Jimmy Graham on offense. I'll stay just as simple. Although, again, a name to watch. I'm thinking Tyrann Mathieu. But I'm going to go with Zach Bond, not back in a Saints uniform. Zach is a free agent. He's going to do a lot what Caden Ellis and Trey Hendrickson both did. Zach's not going to get paid that kind of money on the free agent market, but he's going to find somewhere where his best skill set fits in with their defense. Baltimore Ravens, Pittsburgh Steelers, that kind of defensive scheme comes to mind. But Zach Bond will not be back in a New Orleans Saints uniform, or if he is, I'll be surprised.
Yeah, find somewhere that runs a 3-4 because
Mm-hmm.
at the end of the day, when the Saints started allowing him to rush the passer, he showed that he's capable of being a decent pass rusher at the NFL level. So yeah, Tech Saint, you're welcome. Keep questions coming throughout the
Yes.
off season. We love them. Bob, dot or drop to me on 2023.
Did we freeze? We back?
Welcome back.
Okay. Dot or drop for the New Orleans Saints. The New Orleans Saints pass rush, or lack thereof, was the most disappointing aspect of this entire team on the field.
Drop. I'm a little more overly critical of this unit because I played that unit when I was in middle school, high school is the offensive line. Like, I had a lot of high hopes for the offensive line this
Fair.
year. And I know there were injuries, right? There were injuries all over. Trevor Penning didn't live up to the hype. The interior of the offensive line was really bad, especially, after hearing a lot of people say that Eric McCoy was one of the better young centers in the league. Cesar Ruiz had made the jump. They were bad. And so for me, I would say the lack of pass rush was definitely a close second. Especially like Isaiah Foskey didn't get a whole lot of run. Granderson was the only bright spot. Cam Jordan, big decrease in the numbers. So yeah, while I think it is totally fair if someone were to pick that, for me, it's the offensive line. I'm a little more critical, but I think the offensive line struggles early on are also a direct result of the Saints missing the playoffs. If the offensive line would have held up a little bit better early in the season, I think the Saints actually get in. So for me, to you, the Saints have clinched the 14th pick of the first round of the NFL draft. Dot or drop, Bob. The Saints will draft an offensive lineman, just staying on that topic, with pick number 14.
It's literally flip a coin. I do think they go lineman, but I think it could be defensive lineman, edge, rusher specifically, just as easily as it could be an offensive lineman. So I don't know whether that means dot or drop. I'll go dot. They will draft a lineman with their first draft choice. But if offensive line specifically, I don't know if I'm ready to commit to that quite yet. You know what? I think they at least have some pieces at edge. With as disappointing as Trevor Penning has been, Ryan Ramczak's injury, as bad as Cesar Ruiz has been, James Hurst free agent, Andrus Peat free agent. Yes, now that I say that out loud, dot at this stage, early January 2024, dot they will draft an offensive lineman with their first round choice.
Okay. Kenneth asks, how many draft picks for the Saints? We'll get in a little bit into that. Is it a rebuilding year? No, it's not a rebuilding year. And here's why. As much as some of you would like to see this thing stripped down completely, Saints were 9-8, right? Like, if they win one more game at 10-7, you should be making the playoffs. You would make the playoffs as a wild card or division winner. So no, I don't think it's a rebuilding year. I think if they have another year where they don't make the playoffs, you're going to have to really consider that. Because this is third straight year the Saints miss by like a game. So if you have another season like that, I think you can look at it potentially as a rebuilding year. But no, I don't think this is a rebuilding year.
No, they're not ready for that yet. And unless we're mildly surprised and we hear that Dennis Allen, they move on from Dennis Allen on Monday or Tuesday or early this week. As long as Dennis Allen is the coach, they still believe that they can win. Because with Dennis Allen comes Derek Carr. You don't rebuild your team unless you make moves at head coach and quarterback. They aren't going to do that. Question answered. It's a good question, but that's just where my belief is.
All right, Bob. Last dot or drop of 2023 regular season from you to me, and we'll let people enjoy Sunday Night Football.
Wow. Man, I don't know. Dot or drop. The play/potential of Paulson Adebo, Alontae Taylor, Isaac Yiadom has made Marshawn Lattimore expendable.
In the eyes of the Saints, that's a dot. In the eyes of me, I think it's
right.
A drop. And that's not saying that those three guys did not play stellar this year. I was really impressed with Paulson Adebo. Alontae Taylor got benched a few times, but he also made some big plays this year. Isaac Yiadom, oh my goodness, a guy who was really thrown to the hounds and played really well. I think all those guys are capable of being your 1, 2, 3. And we've said this about Lattimore for years, is it's really hard to find a lockdown corner.
Mm-hmm.
Like think in your guys' brains, like the last few lockdown corners in the NFL. For me, the only like two come to mind, right? Two. And I'm probably forgetting someone, but like the 3-year stretch of like Richard Sherman, Legion of Boom, and Darrell Revis. Like those guys. You could maybe throw Jalen Ramsey in there. I don't know. I'm probably missing somebody. But like that type of level of player does not come around a lot. And I do think Lattimore, when he's at his best, and that's always been a concern of his, he's at that level.
Yep.
So no, like drop. Like the Saints, if they're smart, in my opinion, you should keep them around. Unless they feel like they can get ridiculous amount of assets back.
Yep.
That's it. If you feel like you can go and you can trade him for, I don't think you can get a day 1 pick for him at this point. But if you could get multiple day 2 picks and a player back, maybe you do it. But that's the only, you would have to get something back that involves multiple draft picks. I'm not saying 6th rounders, 7th rounders, like multiple day 2 picks and potentially a player. That's the only way. So no, I'm going to drop that. Well, Bob, here we are. End of the regular season, end of the Saints season. We have a lot to talk about this offseason.
Yeah.
And it really starts like tomorrow. You're on multiple shows. You're going to be with Jordy this week, I'm sure. You're going to be with Alan this week. You're going to be on the Bayou Blitz, and you're going to be writing articles for the Saints News Network. So, as you said, your local media people are the people you need to trust and listen to in the off season. Bob, you and John Hendricks and Ross Jackson, Kyle T. Mosley, the Saints News Network. That's the best place to find the most credible insight and work. So, where can people find you and them throughout the off season?
Yeah, that's just it. And all of us are together at the Saints News Network, at Saints News on Twitter, or the SI.com team site for the New Orleans Saints. And I already mentioned Nick Underhill. We are not affiliated with Nick or New Orleans Football and all the fine folks they have over there. But yeah, seriously, and this is no disrespect necessarily to anybody else. Just be careful who you listen to, because there's going to be all kinds of rumors, all kinds of people claiming they have sources. New Orleans Football, they have sources. Saints News Network, we have sources, or if we don't cite the story without getting sources. That's our job. We take it very seriously, and I will say that others do not. So keep that in mind going forward. And you can follow me, folks, personally. Bob Rose on Facebook, ROSE, at Bobby R 2613. And please, folks, as we go into the off season, don't forget to continue to support the Bayou Blitz Facebook page, which may or may not, probably will be renamed very soon, or Bayou Blitz Twitter page at Bayou Blitz Pod. Brendan and I will start to do exclusive content for members only of those Bayou Blitz pages going forward. I don't know exactly when. Brendan and I have not worked out exactly what, but you better believe that if you are a member of the Bayou Blitz very, very soon, you will have access to things that the average fan does not. So if you are already a member, thank you, and we love you for it. If you are not, start to get other Saints fans over. Beef up that group. This is your group. This is your show. Even though our pregame and postgame shows are done for the year, we are continuing to give you a weekly podcast, and as usual, we're going to have our draft night extravaganza too. So I mean, you're not going to get rid of us anytime soon. Just help beef up our brand, because our brand is your brand.
And for myself, you can follow me virtually everywhere at BT Boylan. Make sure you join the Bayou Blitz Mafia, soon to be Bayou Blitz Mafia. On Facebook, we're really close to 2,000. And then for us on Twitter, Bayou Blitz Pod. thanks so much for tuning in with us throughout the season. We really appreciate all you guys. We look forward to bringing you some of the best, if not the best, off-season coverage for the New Orleans Saints. We'll be with the Bayou Blitz week in and week out, so we cannot wait to see you guys then. Again, thanks so much for your support throughout the 2023 season. The Saints finish it 9-8. They missed the playoffs by one game for the third consecutive season. Until later this week on the Bayou Blitz, that's Bob Rose. I'm Brendan Boylan. Until then, find peace, spread love, practice positivity. Who dat?